Next, I'm going to be interviewing Eric Byrne and Joan Collins, which will include a debate on some very important community issues, and we'll see what happens. Today we have Eric Byrne, a TD from the Labour Party, and Joan Collins, a TD from the People Before Profit. They both represent Dublin South Central. They're here today to debate on their views on the recession and talk a little about themselves, starting with Joan Collins. What influenced you to get involved in politics and what motivates you?
What motivates me, I got involved in politics through my union in the post office, and essentially just developed from there. Supported people that are on strikes, Joan Delaney, people like that in the Dunstores and the Ashleaf a number of years ago, sacked for wearing a union badge, and all those type of disputes and supports that we've got involved in, and issues on the ground that people are facing every day of the week, and obviously the bin tax campaign, which is a big campaign in the Dublin South Central area.
So you're interested in problems like that regularly normal people have these days, yeah. And Eric, what influenced you to get involved in politics, and what motivates you?
Well, of course, I grew up in a very small working class community in Harold's Cross Cottages. We were a family of about 8 kids, and you can appreciate in those days, mother, father, 8 kids in a tiny 2-bedroom place. Grew up in a working class community, always attached myself to working class issues, still do, and I suppose it was the basic inequalities in Irish society that repulsed me, particularly the likes of Fianna Fáil with its relationship with developers and builders, and the tent where they'd collect money at the Galway races every year, all that corruption, and then to see the corrupt leadership of Fianna Fáil by Charles J. Haughey, and then followed by another corrupt politician called Bertie Ahern, was enough to make anybody get motivated and activated in this country.
So the issue in the news at the moment is about unguaranteed Anglo-Irish bondholders. Why, in your opinion, do we have to pay unguaranteed bondholders another $3 million at the end of the month, John?
Well, I don't think we have to pay them. These are unguaranteed, as you said. They're not necessary to pay them. And we would be in the group that would say don't pay them, because that money should be going back into the economy. It should be going back into create jobs. It should be going back into protect our services. And that have been slashed right across the board from the budget of the last budget in December. The only reason why the government are saying they have to pay it is because they've been told to pay it, that's to protect the bankers and the bondholders, etc. And I think this is absolutely wrong, and that the government are doing it, and Labour are wrong to support it as well.
So you think don't pay and it'll help the country get back on its feet?
Well, I'm saying we shouldn't pay it because it's not necessary to pay it. It's not part of the debt that we created. This is going back specifically to pay the French and German bankers to protect their wealth in their banks. And we as a country cannot service that debt for the next 10 years. I mean, you're talking about €47 billion over the next 10 years to pay back to people just to protect their wealth. In the meantime, people in our communities are feeling the effects of the austerity budget.
Yeah. And what's your opinion on that, Eric?
Well, I wish life was as simple as Joan makes it out to be. Unfortunately, we live in the real world of capitalism. We live in the real democracy, which is Ireland. We live in the real world where this country is bankrupt. It was bankrupt by Fianna Fáil. Not only did Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and Sinn Féin give a bank guarantee, a complete guarantee for the repayment of all debts. We, when we got into government, couldn't reverse the decision that had been taken, that was committed to, because this country is bankrupt. Now, if you do what Joan says do, just don't pay, then someone's going to have to...
These are unguaranteed bank.
It is money that was loaned to this country. This country is paying back under the IMF, EU and European Central Bank money which is spent recklessly.
Yeah.
The problem for Ireland is that if you don't pay it back, those who continue to give us the bailout, we get money every year, every 3 months from the Troika. They've told us we're not to go near it.
So the help will continue.
We are continuing to negotiate. It's long, complicated negotiations about that particular element. Yeah. It is outrageous that any group committed to repaying this money by giving a carte blanche guarantee. We're stuck with the guarantee, and we are renegotiating, as we have, elements of the deal to date.
Okay. And John, do you think the home tax is fair?
Absolutely. I think it's unfair and unjust. It's a tax on the family home. It's a poll tax. It's €100 on a person who's living in a one-bedroom flat. And the same €100 will be paid by James Riley in his mansion up in Moneygall. It's absolutely outrageous. The government should rescind their legislation. We've seen a huge opposition to it. 86% of people have not paid this home tax because they know that it's not going to stop at €100. We know that the government want to bring in the ESRI, who are a government think tank, have said that property will be taxed, as they put it, property at a minimum of €700 for an average family home, and on top of that, yes, annually, and then at 400 potentially water tax on top of that as well. So this will very quickly turn from €2 to at least €20 a week. I know, and Eric knows, that people have not got that sort of money. Right across the board, everything is cut. You're talking about an old age pensioner having to pay it, and you're talking about Dennis O'Brien having to pay it. It's just outrageous, it's unjust, and I think Enda Kenny has come out in 1994 and said that it was unjust and immoral to tax family homes. James Riley has come out and said it's unfair, and the Labour Party said it's unfair. So if it's unfair, they should just rescind it and withdraw it from the Constitution.
And Eric, what do you think about it? Do you think the home tax is fair?
I don't think it's fair, quite frankly. I don't think...
Do you agree with Joan on that?
No, I don't agree with Joan on it. It's not a fair tax, that's for sure. Yeah. But what Joan didn't tell you was that this country borrows €350 million a week from the IMF, EU. We've lost our sovereignty as a nation. We're not an independent nation anymore. Every 3 months, the Troika sit over the shoulders of our ministers and tell our ministers effectively what way they have to cut their budgets. We are in austerity. It's an outrage. It's something that we've inherited. It's terrible. And they want, and Joan is right, there will be more taxes coming down the line. There will be water taxes. There'll be the property taxes, the first start. They are insisting on these taxes. And they laugh at us when we tell them, you know, we never had to collect, we never had to pay for our bins before, we never had to pay for our water before. And they say, tough luck. You're living on borrowed money. You do what we tell you, or you don't get the money. So in effect, the big struggle we're engaged in now is trying to regain our sovereignty. While we're not independent, while we are not sovereign as a nation, we are controlled by the masters of the IMF, and we have to try and protect our citizens as best we can. But as you know, as a bankrupt nation, and as we've been sold down the drain by Fianna Fáil and the Green Party and Sinn Féin, who gave the carte blanche guarantee, we have to try and break the connection with the Troika. We have to try and get our own independence back before we can move forward. Well then, if that's the case, Eric, why are you supporting the fiscal treaty? Because that's bringing us back into austerity again from the point of view of losing our sovereignty, because we'd be giving our sovereignty over to the ECB, the banks and that. So this idea of saying we're trying to get our way out of to regain our sovereignty is not true in my mind. And just in relation to the bin charges, you know as well, Eric, that we did pay for our public services through an increase in VAT. That money was to be given to local authorities to pay for our public services. That was withdrawn by the government at the time, and you're right, Fianna Fáil, disastrous, corrupt, crony political party, and hopefully we'll see them in the dustbin of history over the next period of time. But you cannot then implement the same type of policies on people, because you know that people cannot pay this household tax. It's a family home tax, it's not a property tax, and I think that has to be clarified as well. Property is a different thing. Property is yachts, it's property that's second, you know, big buildings, all that type of thing, assets that the wealthy have. It's not the family home. Well, I'd love that we were not in a position to have to borrow 350 million a week, 350 million a week.
How do you expect to get the unemployed back working when the majority of the country's unemployed at the moment?
Well, what we have argued continuously in the Dáil is that, and we have our own programme, is that the wealthy in this country historically have never been taxed. And it's just surprising that a Labour Party in power have not demanding that the wealthy pay their tax. Something like the top 5% have 46.85% of net wealth. That's €219 billion, and they're not being taxed effectively on that. We say tax that at 5%, and you have €10 billion. Tax anybody over €100,000 to get another €5 billion, and use that money to try and create jobs. There's loads of jobs needed out there. Our underground pipes, water pipes are burst, and they should be fixed. There's loads of retrograding in our homes we should be doing. It was a good initiative, I have to say. Rory Quinn coming out the other day, the school bill, that's going to create jobs. But that's what we need, more direct intervention by the state to create jobs, because private companies are not doing that at the moment. There's a strike on investment of the private companies. So we need to invest money in that way, and that's the way we see it happening. The government, on the other hand, say that it's not the government's job to create jobs, it's the government's job to create the environment. You cannot create the environment when there's just further austerity. And just to take up a point before Eric comes in, he was saying about Sinn Féin and all them voting for the bank guarantee. That's right. But it was also the troika of Fine Gael, Labour and Fianna Fáil that voted in the next 4 years austerity budgets before the election last year. So they agreed with the austerity budgets for the next 3 years as well. So they're not clean hands on that one either.
I think what your viewers must remember, that when Joan speaks the way she does about how simple it all is by just not paying, and she was the leading light in the anti-household bin charges campaign, that if people listen to Joan, they've got to remember the consequences. When you simplistically say to people, don't panic, don't pay, look at the consequences of Joan's campaign on those unfortunate 50,000 poor people in the city of Dublin who now, because of Joan's actions on the bin tax, are going to lose their waiver scheme. Joan told people not to pay. Those of us who did pay were cross-subsidising those on the waiver. Now Joan has effectively had the bin collection system privatised, and you have succeeded in having the bin collection system privatised, and you have effectively removed from the social support mechanism that we were happy to support by paying for our bins to be collected. You are now throwing to the wolves 40 to 50,000 unfortunate, very poor people in this city who are now going to lose their waiver.
I think Eric was trying to rewrite history here.
That is history.
This Labour actually in Fine Gael in 1984, I think it was, brought in the legislation to allow taxes like bin taxes and water taxes come in. And when they brought the collection of waste to a point where it was becoming a profitable entity and a commodity, that's when things changed drastically, because very quickly all over the country, before even it hit Dublin, people were forced to were actually privatised. Many of the local authorities that privatised their bin service in 2001, 2 and 3. So it wasn't the Dublin anti-bin tax campaign that forced Greyhound, or in the situation of Greyhound.
Why aren't you running after Greyhound with the bins?
And the point
the way you run after the city council.
The point about it is,
why don't you get people to campaign against Greyhound and run after them down
But if your government hadn't brought the legislation in 1984, you wouldn't be in this situation, you know?
If you had not have told people not to pay their bin charges, the 50,000 elderly, vulnerable, poor people in my city are now being penalised directly because of your campaign.
You voted this in Dublin City Council from 2001 to 2003 when you had an opportunity to vote against in Dublin City Council.
When they didn't pay and couldn't get their bins collected, quite rightly, by the local authority, you forced them to go into the private sector. You told them to go to Thornton's in Ballyfermot.
Absolutely
They all
not.
went to all the private. The Dublin City Council. The Dublin City Council was carrying up to 15 million of a cross subsidy for elderly people who are now going to lose their waiver, thanks to John Collins telling people not to pay and to throw the rubbish in the bin lorry as it went by. I don't see you running after private. I don't see you running after private bin collectors right now.
You can't pretend that you say that you're a socialist, or you don't like the inequality that's in our communities. You know damn well that the whole idea of the bringing in a charge on our waste was the start of privatisation. It was the start of commodifying our waste collection services. And from that point onwards, it became an instrument where private companies are going to be interested in taking it over. And they were as I said, the bin tax campaign in Dublin was developed around 2002, 2003. It's a very active campaign. In the meantime, most of the local authorities have handed over their waste collection to private companies through the actions of the Labour Party and other parties in the councils voting for these every year. And your party had an opportunity in 2001 and 2002 to actually vote against the budgets that brought in the bin tax. So that's just absolutely wrong.
Well,
and I'm opposed.
Joan, you're living in Cloud
now we have a situation.
Joan says don't pay, don't panic, don't pay the €100. She's not telling the people the consequences for them. just as she never told them the consequences
That's
of their bin charges not being paid. She's not telling them the consequences if they don't register and pay their €100, that they are going to be penalised in an incredible way. Now, Joan, tell the people the consequences of following in your actions.
We tell
Joan,
people that meetings all the time.
I'll conclude on the bin tax issue now. Joan says you shouldn't have voted in the estimates. You shouldn't have voted in. Joan is effectively telling you that she knows that when you don't vote for the estimates, in Dublin City Council, your council is abolished. You get abolished and the city is run by one commissioner. Now, Joan, as an anarchist, as a Trotskyist, you are quite happy to advocate, chaos out there. But I'm just telling you, you should be more honest with the electorate and tell them that when you tell them not to register and not to pay, that there is a direct financial consequences for them.
Which people knew. And people were aware. You went to public meetings.
You tell the 50,000 elderly people that they knew that by following in your footsteps.
When you said you weren't paying the bin tax at the time.
50,000 unfortunate poor people now who are going to lose the waiver, that they knew they were going to lose the waiver by listening to what you told them.
That's by your actions, Eric, and the actions of your party right across the local
authorities.
To
the working class. You penalise them.
So any other way of getting us out of recession, though, apart from making more cuts?
We must. What happens now is we're tied into this programme of getting our spending. There's 18 billion each year of a difference between what we spend for teachers and local services and the guards and the banks, right? Or not the banks, the guards and the army. So the income tax take, the total tax take to the state is insufficient to pay for the services that are being delivered, right? That's why we have to borrow to keep, the old age pensioners and pensions, the country running. Yeah. Now, Joan says, just don't pay it. I mean, if you do that, then who is going to pay it? I'd love, sometimes you wish that your prophecies could come true, that if you follow in Joan's footsteps and the schools all close and the pensioners all have their pensions, because no more money comes out of the ATM machines and no more money comes out of the banks, because our bosses in the IMF, the European Central Bank and the Commissioner says, right, you've taken the decision. All you've got to do is look at what's happening to those countries like in Greece, and look at Turkey, look at, not Turkey, Hungary, look at Hungary. Look, do you know, somebody said to me, and I'll tell you what country they came from, Estonia. They said, austerity in this country, you must be joking. Wait till I show you my country and austerity. When the IMF moved into Latvia, they systematically instructed hospitals, schools, universities, and pensions just cease overnight. There are horrendous ramifications for this country. There are horrendous ramifications if we as a government cannot stabilise the spending, cannot woo our financiers, if we cannot woo the French and the German and get them to understand, which they are slowly coming to terms with, that the austerity measures that we have been compelled to enact because of Fianna Fáil, that these austerity measures on their own cannot turn this country around. So we need to be able, and that's why there's diplomats all over the world dealing in a diplomatic way with the bankers. We've got this weekend, you've got Minister for Finance over with the French Minister for Finance, and so we are negotiating. It's very delicate, it's behind the scenes, and we just have to win, because if we don't win the long-term battle, there is no future for this country.
Yeah. And John, what do you think?
Well, Ollie Rehn unfortunately came out of the day and said there's absolutely no move in relation to the 3.1 billion unguaranteed bond going to Anglo. They have come down very hard. They said we have to pay. Eric makes a point about other countries, Greece and other European countries. We've also seen Spain have got a haircut in relation to their debt as well. I think that we're not strong enough. We're not getting the message out to Europe that we cannot pay this, that we will not pay it. And I think we have to put it up to them like that. Eric says that it would be horrendous, absolutely horrendous, if we didn't pay it. Well, it's horrendous at the moment for people, and we are paying it. And it's going to be horrendous next year when there's another 3.5 billion taken out of the economy, and the next year when there's another 3.5 billion taken out of the economy. It'd be even more horrendous for people. So how you can say we just, if we don't challenge what's going on at the moment, we accept the inevitability of more austerity budgets. And you made the point about we live in capitalism, and we live in an international capitalist world. I'm a socialist, you used to be. And
no,
I think...
Sorry, I am a socialist, you're a Trotskyist, which is not the same.
And by that definition, you should be opposed to the oppression that the Troika is bringing down on the people of this country. You're a part of the oppression now in relation to Labour Party and Fine Gael, in relation to implementing the austerity that the IMF, EU, ECB are imposing on people. We have to stand up against that. You know, in your history, in working class history, people stand up, they fight back, and that's where I'm linking myself in with those people who want to fight back and fight against this absolute madness of capitalism that is forcing people and to pay for the bondholders and the bankers who actually created all this crisis. And if we don't stand up, we just accept the servitude of the Troika for the future. And if you want to live with that, Eric, that's your political business.
Let me give your viewers a bit of hope. We are going to get out of the mess we're in. We have created more jobs in the last 12 months than Fianna Fáil created in the last 4 years. We are highly thought of in the international arena. We have access, as you know, this is the weekend of St. Patrick's Day. We have access to the President of America. We have had Clinton organise industrialists to invest in Ireland. In fact, only today I think I heard that another 360 million is going to be invested by another company. We just got last week, we got 1,000 jobs for that company, I forget what it's called. You pay your money on the internet. PayPal, yeah. There are jobs coming in because our ministers are working tirelessly throughout the world. It's not coincidental that we are now talking to the French Minister for Finance. Yeah. I am absolutely confident that we need, and the only long-term solution to our crisis is that we generate jobs.
But there seems to be a lot of controversy about the United Left Allegiance. Like, do you really only take home your average net allowance?
That's what, Joan.
United Left Alliance, yeah. We committed that I take the wage I was on as a post office worker and the council, so I take out €850 of my wages every month, and it goes into Solidarity Fund, where we utilise to support communities and people that are taking action.
Like fund back to community.
Yeah. So that's my commitment, and we stuck.
And that comes out of your own pocket.
Yeah, well, that comes out of the wages. Yeah, it's just taken out of my bank account and put straight into it.
So that was your choice, right?
And the other ULATDs do that as well. They take the average industrial wage or the wage they were on as airport workers or whatever. So that's where I stand in relation to that, and I think that anybody earning over 100,000, we've had it again in our material, should be taxed, and they should be patrons and put the money back into the country when the country needs it. Eric said there's a very positive note. There is a very positive note in this country. We have an absolute, we've 300, I know people saw the Sunday Independent there the weekend, the 300 rich list. And they've actually increased their wealth last year by €4.9 billion, bringing them up to €67 billion. That's a massive amount of money. They are not contributing towards the economy at the moment. And we would say by taxing that wealth, it would go a long way to trying to kickstart the economy and creating jobs. That's the positive message we want to get out there as well.
Well, what Joan didn't tell you, of course, is that she takes every penny that we all get in our salaries. She doesn't save the taxpayers one brass farthing because she takes the salary every month. What she does with her money is her own business. But I think she's going to stop the hypocrisy of telling us that she's only accepting the national the industrial wage because Joan is costing the taxpayer the very same sum of money as I cost the taxpayer. In fact, she's actually cost the taxpayer. Joan gets €41,000 more than I do, because she's not a member of a political party.
No, that's not true.
She gets 41,000
that's not true.
on top of what we get, and she's shy about telling the public.
No, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. I'm not an independent. I'm a registered party, so I don't get that 41,000 that's unvouched. No, I don't get that.
You are a group of individuals masquerading under different political parties' labels. The Socialist Workers' Party. You're talking about Breed Smith as a member, as the General Secretary, Assistant General Secretary of your party.
That's not.
You get 41,000 more than everybody else.
I don't. You want to check it out. You have your facts wrong. Yeah, you have your facts wrong.
It's been
well, thanks very much, Eric, for coming today, and Joan. It was a pleasure. Thanks very much. Stay tuned.
Much appreciated.